Hi, my name is Eddie C, and welcome to my Positive Podcast. I'll bring you positive stories of people from all walks of life, because everyone has a story to tell. Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to MPP, my Positive Podcast. I'm your host, Eddie C, and this is episode 5. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in each week, following my guests, listening to their stories. And you know, I always believe everyone has a story to tell. I've got 3 unique guests here this week as well. One is an environmental expert and has a lot of hobbies to fill up the rest of her time. I also have a buddy of mine who's a fantastic photographer, but he's done several different jobs in his life, and he's also a writer. And my third guest is a multi-talented musician who plays funky music to classical music. So if you're curious to know their stories, stay tuned to My Positive Podcast. Welcome to My Positive Podcast. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to open up the show with my first guest. She's a wonderful person. Once you get to know her, she loves singing, she loves dancing. She loves music, especially pop music, and she's a massage therapist, spiritual-minded, great cook. Please welcome my first guest, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Martine De Prins. Hi, how are you doing, my dear?
I'm doing fine, Eddie. Thank you very much.
Great. It's wonderful to have you on the show. And I know your main job has always been an environmentalist expert, huh? You're very much into nature. I know that as well, outside of your hobbies with your music, your dance and massage and the whole spiritual thing. Quite a busy agenda you have. Can you tell a little bit more to our audience about yourself and actually how you got involved as an environmentalist expert?
Well, in fact, it was by coincidence that I became involved in the waste management because in the 80s I studied chemistry, and it was the purpose to work in a laboratory. And then I started looking for a job. But in the end of the 80s, our country suffered from an economic crisis, and there was not that much work. But there was one industry which was growing enormously, and that was the waste management business. As the legislation was changing fundamentally, as so far, most of the waste was put on landfill. And only for hazardous waste, there was some incineration on boats on sea. And then during the 30 years I worked in this sector, there came a lot of new European legislations, which makes that the waste needed to be segregated. So it couldn't be put on landfill anymore as it was, as a mix. So it should be segregated at source. There was the government who was asking more and more reportings on sustainable production. So which means less waste production. New legislations on waste removal, following the ladder of Lansing. That's an item, something very specific for the waste management industry. But it means that waste should be prevented as far as possible during the production process. If that is not possible, it needs to be reused. If that is not possible, there is recycling. And then there is incineration, and at the end, the landfill. So the less waste on landfill, the better.
Right.
So which meant that there were a lot of new companies on the markets which were coming up, certainly for the recycling of waste, not only for plastics or cardboard, but also, for instance, for solvents and hazardous waste out of chemical or pharmaceutical industries. There came also a physical-chemical treatment of hazardous waste, like dewatering or removing the hazardous substance by chemical reactions.
Right.
There came more and more incineration facilities on land for both hazardous and non-hazardous waste. And I've seen the development of all these things during the last 30 years. And it was a great job to do, to see how things evolve to save our planet, in fact.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
and that whole process, because it's just quite an interesting subject, I think, and very interesting to know a bit, to tell our listeners a little bit more. Your involvement in it was the whole development of a part of the managing of how it was organized, or uh,
Yeah, in fact, I was a technical sales advisor in the waste management industry, which means that as the new legislation evolved as it did, more companies were asking for waste management guidance.
Okay, so you had a lot of companies asking for the guidance, and that,
Yeah.
of course, expanded your, let's say, your possibilities within the company as well.
Yeah, for sure. So we worked on total waste management. So thinking with the companies on prevention or reuse of waste, also on the internal collection of waste, because that can also be a big issue. If, for instance, you think about the automotive industry, there is so much packaging waste which is produced there every day. It needs to be collected internally, gone to a container park, we brought it to a container park internally, where it was gathered to send it to recycling companies. Right. So, when there was a lot of thinking about how it could be done the most cost-effective and environmental friendly way.
Right. Well, once again, people like you're doing stuff behind the scenes, and that people don't really realize. We take a lot of things, and waste is one thing I think most people take for granted. Because you see it even with some of the things I've seen going by with the COVID. People just leave their waste out everywhere, and it's really bad for the planet. And hopefully people will start to change their minds, if they're going to go to have a picnic and stuff. And I understand, COVID has been frustrational for a lot of folks, especially for a lot of young folks, because that's a different generation than, let's say, than my generation and probably your generation as well. I think we had a little bit more value about what's there. We're living now in a time where the younger generation don't realize how lucky they are and how spoiled they've been. And now COVID has come along, and I think it's starting to open up the minds of people a little bit more. And hopefully they will start to be a little bit more responsible towards the planet as well as towards each other. Well, let's move on to something which I know is very big for you. And you have a fantastic passion for music. You love, of course, natural health. Dancing is also a big hobby of yours. You like photography. How do you find all the time to fit that in such a busy schedule? Because I know you're on the go a lot, and you're working also, I think, for the local government as far as the environment. You have a very busy schedule. How do you combine it all together?
Well, I was lucky and unlucky to have had some burnouts at work, which were due to a lawsuit which I got involved in. And finally, my doctors advised me to stop working, which means that I have a lot of time left.
Hey.
As I'm interested in a lot of things, I have started some courses. So I followed a course as massage therapist. I followed a 4-year course as an artistic dynamic coach. And I'm doing a lot of voluntary work in the city where I live, where there is a castle. And it's owned by the government, but it's run by volunteers. And at the castle, we organize events, trade fairs, concerts, parties as well. There are people who come there to give readings about certain subjects. And we also organize activities for children, like searches and creative activities and so on. And I'm in the work group there organizing all these events. And I'm also working in the work group catering.
Yeah, it's a beautiful location, because I have played for the at one of the music festivals that you all had at the time with Soul Sister, and fantastic, beautiful castle. I've taken pictures actually of it as well. That it's a really beautiful area, and wow, it's a very peaceful place to to explore and to experience. You mentioned to me once about this a special, it's like a meditation dancing, or can you tell a little bit about that?
Well, in fact, music was my first love, and it will certainly be my last. I always say I could sing before I could talk, my mama always said. I was humming songs in my bed when I was a little child. And I like to dance. My father was a guitarist, singer in a group. And my mother was a very good dancer. And she learned her daughters very early how to dance jive and swing and so on. So I like to go dancing, the classic dances during the weekends when I go out. I also learned salsa and tango, the South American dances, which I like also a lot. I learned to play the guitar, and I sang in some cover bands. But what I do actually is dancing biodanza.
Yeah. And what is biodance exactly? What is that?
Something which is created by a South American psychiatrist who is called Rolando Toro. And he has explored that a lot of people were not really good at talking about their problems, but they could dance their problems out of their body. It's a kind of a dancing creatively, following your own feelings, following the melody or the rhythm of the dance.
Right.
And it can be very different dances like African dances, South American dances, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, it's a creative process where you follow your feelings, and following your feelings, you create a dance.
Okay, but you follow it, but that's more of a freestyle.
And following the rhythm and the lyrics, not really the lyrics, but the melody of the song.
Okay, that's interesting. I think for the listeners to know that there's not a particular form, but it's basically a sort of freestyle dance with South American or any different styles of music mixed together.
It's completely freestyle. Yeah.
Okay. Before I let you go, I've got one more question for you, which is the theme for this week, which is about inspiration. And I would like to know, and I think our listeners would also like to know, what does inspiration mean to you?
Well, I've been thinking about the subject and about what inspires me in life. And I get my inspiration from people in most of the cases. People with a passion and a goal in life to develop that passion. That's something that can really inspire me. In my town where I used to live, there is a floral designer, because I also do floral designing. There is a floral designer which is called Tom de Houwer. And he used to have a flower shop, but now he gives workshops all around the world. So creative. Every time I had an idea, I could go to him and I talked to him about it. And in a wink, he could give some ideas back to make the most beautiful floral designs. And he does big expositions, for instance, in South America, Asia, wherever. And well, that's one of the people who can really inspire me because he's so creative. What also inspires me are stories about people who suffered during life and managed to get through. I read a lot of books from people all around the world, biographies. And most of the biographies are written, how do I say it? With behind it, the history of that country.
Okay. You read a lot of biographies with a historical background.
Yeah, that's it, in fact. Yeah. I once read the book Wild Swans from Jung Chang, which was a beautiful story about 3 generations of women in China. Mm-hmm. From the time that there were still emperors, and that Mao Zedong took everything over. Or, for instance, Pray, Eat, Love is also a real story, and it can really inspire me to bring out the best of me. I also like to interact with people who can show vulnerability, who are sincere, open, honest, and integer, who don't judge nor advise, just let people be who they are. And that can really inspire me as well. That's my spiritual part.
Yeah, but that's one beautiful thing about you that I know. Absolutely.
Thank you. And what also inspires me are people who are living close to nature. I truly believe and I truly hope that more and more people will go back to nature and start living in communities. I think it's the future because we are now in such an individual kind of living, and I hope that it will change in the future again.
All right. We've had the COVID season behind us, and hopefully it's been an eye-opener for a lot of people, to rediscover the value of the simple things in life.
For sure, because those are the most important things after all.
Well, Martine, listen, it's been a pleasure talking with you and, getting your story out to the listeners. I really appreciate it. And I value that very much, as much like I value our friendship that we've developed. I want to thank you again, from the bottom of my heart for doing this interview. And actually, like I said, a lot of people don't know what goes on behind waste. And if people can find you on Facebook, do you have a website that they can reach you on? Or
I don't, but you can get them in touch with me if there are people who are reacting.
I'll put your link on. I'll post your link on my page, and so that people can touch base with you.
Okay,
and,
that's great.
Please, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Sending you a lot of love and hugs, and we'll definitely be talking to each other very soon.
Okay. Bye-bye, Eddie.
Bye-bye. This is My Positive Podcast with Eddie C. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my second guest on the show today is a buddy of mine, and we met actually at a jazz concert. I was at this venue where the concert was, and I wanted to know what time the gig started. So I asked him in Dutch, and he answered me back in English. He says, I don't know yet, maybe in a few minutes. And so I heard this American accent. And so I said, what part of the States are you coming from? And he said, Indiana. I said, man, yeah, I grew up in Indiana. And that was actually the beginning of our friendship. He's a wonderful guy. Please welcome Mr. David Pritchett. Hey, David, how you doing, buddy?
Thanks, Eddie. Hey, you're a wonderful guy, too.
Thanks, man.
And I love the podcast. I mean, the positive podcast, good idea. Everyone needs it.
Thank you, buddy. Listen, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and, what you did in the States, and actually, how did you actually end up coming to live in Belgium?
Sure. Well, in the U.S., I couldn't decide what I wanted to do in life, so I decided to do a lot of things and figured out as I went, so it was kind of trial by error. So I managed a restaurant. I started a record store. I started a DJ service. I DJ'd. I, did a lot of things. And the only thing is I always kept going back to music because I always loved music. That was always one of the things in the background and I finally realized, well, I probably need to do something with music. So that's what happened. And well, my daughter, she graduated from college, and I said, hey, why don't we go on a nice trip, just to father-daughter, and do a trip before you actually get a real job and have to work, and then you might be able to get time off. So she says, hey, okay, that sounds like fun. What about Australia? And I went, wow, that's a long way off,
That's quite a distance.
Besides that, there's a lot of jet lag. I did research and I said, well, why do you want to go there? She said, because it's got a lot of nature. I want to see a lot of beautiful nature. I said, well, what about someplace a little closer, like Alaska? I said, there's no jet lag. They speak English. Oh, well, I guess they do that in Australia too. But I said, we'll have more time to see more nature rather than sleeping after all that jet lag. So anyway, she agreed. So we went to Alaska, and that's how I wound up in Belgium.
You went on a boat cruise?
Oh, yeah. We went on a cruise to Alaska, and I wound up in Belgium because of that.
Yeah, but there must be a little bit more behind that story.
Well, yeah. On the cruise, there was a lady from Belgium who had decided she wanted to see Alaska, and she was there by herself, and we hit it off, and she said, why don't you come visit me in Belgium? I said, okay, where is it? Typical American thing.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I did, and we wound up getting married, and I moved to Belgium. So that's how I wound up here.
Okay. All righty. You mentioned about some of the things that you've done. You've been sort of an entrepreneur, more or less, with all kind of different jobs and things. And I know you got your hobbies that we've spoken about before are, like your photography, especially when it comes to shooting in nature and landscape photography. That's something that you do a lot of. Was that something that developed over the years, or were you always into photography before you left the States and came to Belgium, or is that something that developed at a later phase in your life?
Well, actually, it came about because of Alaska, because while I was there, I had this small camera and there were so many beautiful pictures. And I was like, oh, I need a better camera, So as soon as I got back from that trip, I bought a better camera. And then I really got into photography and started looking for, pictures everywhere, and I love nature. I really do. So I've always been, when I'm out, I'm always looking for a landscape or something that, just is unusual. And that's what I love to take pictures of.
You do some beautiful work, man. I've seen some of your photography. It's awesome, man.
Thank you.
I know you also do a lot of biking, and the area where you're living at is close to the Belgium coast. So
Yes.
it's a beautiful area to do a lot of biking and everything. And you also became, over the years, quite a beer connoisseur.
Yeah. Well, I actually did some bike racing in the U.S. before I moved over here, so that,
Okay.
I used to do a lot of riding there. And then when I came over for the beginning, I was more into getting used to Belgium, so I didn't ride as much. But then later I started riding a lot. And now I still ride. And the beer, I mean, if you live in Belgium, how can you not get interested in beer? Because it's a small country, but they have like 450, 500 different kinds of beer.
Which beer is your favorite one?
Well, actually, the Westvleteren is one of my favorites, which is really hard to get because they don't brew too much. They keep the limit.
The limitation to it. Yeah, I know it's won some awards. It's one of the best beers.
Best beer in the world, actually.
It's a very good beer. Yes.
You like it too. We've had a few together.
We've had some in the past. Yes, we have. I know that there's one thing which is sort of like your main thing that you're doing now. You're a fantastic writer. I've read some of your lyrics. I also did a production with you. You did some writing together with Jeff Wisdom, who was also on the show. And that was sort of more or less a country album. But do you also write other types of music?
Yeah, actually, I have a lot of co-writers from all over the world. I mean, with the internet, you can, connect with people anywhere, I've done songs with writers in Australia, in the US, Wales again, Canada. It's amazing what you can do, with the internet. So it's a lot of fun too.
Like I said, your lyrics are very beautiful. I've actually been busy with some songs with you in the past with some of your lyrics, even though I'm also a lyricist as well. But I like taking the distance sometimes away from that part and focusing on the music as well, along with the co-writing. The other thing is, how has the entertainment industry, in your vision, changed over the years? Because you did some DJing back in the day, and I'm not talking about the house and dance. You were actually playing records without, providing music for the people to be entertained, compared to the way it is now, where there's a whole lot of beats and stuff up under it and a lot of mixing going on. The traditional record DJ, for parties and stuff. How has that changed for you as compared to the way it is now?
Well, for me, I mean, I was part of that. I was selling the music and DJing and providing a little bit of entertainment, and then now, I'm writing the music basically. So for me, it's changed. I went in a full circle from selling it to actually creating it, which is something that I love to do. And, it's a lot of fun. to write something that inspires people. I try to stay with the positive, just like your podcast. I try to keep things uplifting and that have a meaning behind them that's not just noise, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. I understand. You want to tell a message along with the writing. I've actually seen you perform some of your poetry, which is quite nice. It's actually how I met Jeff, in fact. This because he was there to perform. Well, this week's theme is basically talking about inspiration. That's our word for this week. Can you tell our listeners and me, what inspiration means to you?
Sure. To me, inspiration is if something really touches you, something you see, something you hear, something you read, or maybe watch. A movie can do that. And a song can do that. It's if it touches you where you really feel it, you're not just hearing it, but you really feel it inside. To me, that is inspiration. And when you get inspired, I feel that then you have to share it, Mm-hmm. And if you're inspired, you're going to inspire others because it's kind of an automatic thing, Once you're touched, you've got to express it and share it. And to me, that's what inspiration is.
Are you more inspired by let's say, by your surroundings, basically, or is it because, you mentioned the different things, but for your own personal value, what is it that, let's say, gives you that extra inspiration?
Well, actually, everything inspires me. Life inspires me. Just being here, to me, is inspiring because it's amazing. To look out and see the sunset and look out and see a beautiful flower, and that's, I guess, where the photography comes in. It's like if I see it, I like to take a picture of it. But inspiration can come from anywhere, and if you're open and you listen, it takes you out of your box. A lot of people, they kind of live in a box and they don't get out of it, until something actually knocks the box over, or and if you will listen and observe and stay aware, there's inspiration everywhere. There really is.
I always say use all five senses and use that sixth sense, which is your intuition. That's important as well. That makes it happen.
That's probably the most important, actually.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, listen, David, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, buddy. And the next time we'll get together, whether it's up my way or whether it's down your way, we'll meet up and have a beer. And
Sounds
look
good.
at some nice sights, and I'll bring my camera with me as well, and we'll do some photography together, buddy.
And we'll inspire each other. How's that sound?
And that sounds fantastic, mate. All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. You're an inspiration to a lot of us. Thanks, buddy. All right. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. My name is Eddie C., and you're listening to My Positive Podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my third guest for today's show is actually, she's a bass player. She's a piano player making classical music, but her main profession was actually a sales technical manager. Please welcome my third guest for this week, Miss Ilse van der Broeck. Hi, Ilse.
Hey, Eddie. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show, and I'm glad you want to share your story with us. So let's get right into the questions.
Okay.
All righty. Can you tell a bit about yourself? You're being a technical sales manager, and you ended up becoming a professional musician. How did that all come about?
Well, I was always working as a technical salesperson in time and attendance and access control. And at that time, I played the bass as a hobby. So I started playing the bass guitar, I think about 5-6 years ago. And I saw some gigs, and I was really passionate about the bass. And at that time, my boyfriend had a bass guitar at our home because he played when he was 16 years old. So I asked him, how does it work with all that stripes and little dots on it? And so he explained it to me. I tried it out, and once I felt the bass in my stomach, I was really smitten. And then I took lessons for 1 year. After the year, I played together with other musicians. And it was a kind of a little concert organized by the music school itself. And for me, it was so much fun to share the music with other musicians, to play together, to feel that vibe, that I said to my husband, this is really what I wanted to do. But at that time, it was a hobby. So we went on the internet searching for some cover bands or other bands who were in search of a bass player. Yeah, and then I contacted a group, and I could do some audition over there. And I learned by heart 10 songs in 3 days. And then, it was the beginning of playing the bass guitar, let's say 1 or 2 weekends a month. And I was so passionate about it that at that time I hadn't had that nice feeling anymore from my job. So I was doubting a lot. Okay, can I not become a musician 100% professionally? Yes, indeed.
Right.
And it kept me busy. And then one day, the management of the company where I worked for changed, and there were other rules, and I didn't agree so much with those new rules. The atmosphere was changing. And that was really the moment that I said to myself, hey, you only live once. And I wanted to do something that, gives me a positive vibe. So 2 years ago, I decided 1 week before Christmas to quit my job and to become professional musician.
Oh, wow. Quite a story. But not only are you playing bass, because when you're playing bass guitar, you're kind of performing basically with pop music and more commercial music, right?
With the bass, it's more like pop, rock, blues, the everyday songs from Elvis to CCR to Joe Cocker, Tina Turner. So yes.
Okay.
But because I decided to become a professional musician, and I hadn't ever heard of COVID-19 at that time, it became a little bit of a problem because we couldn't rehearse anymore. There were no gigs anymore. So I decided to play the piano again, because I did it when I was 14, 15 years old, but I didn't do much with it.
Okay.
And then, I started playing the piano again. I already composed some classical songs when I was 14, 15, I think, but didn't do anything about it. And so now I decided to produce my own debut album with classical piano music.
Okay. That's quite a change from the bass guitar with the pop music. You also have a sort of an alias name for your classical music, right? You don't go under the name Ilse van den Broek as a classical piano. You have another name that you're using.
Yes. For my piano project, I use Elisabeth Wolf, because Ilse, it comes from Elisabeth. And I wanted to do something international as well, because the piano music, I don't sing. So it's universal. So I wanted to share my music with the whole world and not only stay in Belgium or in the Netherlands. So I used Elisabeth because it's more international. And Wolf because my mother's name is De Wolf. And I found that it was a strong name. Classical name. There is a good vibe, kind of strength behind it. Yes.
Okay. So you're functioning as bass player on Ilse van den Broek and as classical musician under the name Elizabeth the Wolf. All right. That's cool, man.
Yes. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you.
So let me ask you another question about that, because what do you prefer? I mean, I know COVID has changed a lot for all of us, especially in the creative world as well. And so we are all reinventing ourselves more or less. So how has that affected you as a musician. And do you ever have any thoughts about going back to your old job again, or?
No, never. Luckily, no, never. I can answer that question very easy and very quick. No, it's the best decision in my life. I won't be lying if I say, it's not always so easy, because you are dreaming about a career as a musician. And because of COVID-19, it isn't possible anymore. So you have to be, like you said, very creative and stay very positive. I'm lucky that I have a very positive character, and I always try to see the good things in people, in situations. So that helped me a lot. But for me, it's the vibe and the feeling that is important. So in the morning when I wake up and it's a very sunny day and I feel like sitting at my piano to play a little bit and compose some songs, then I play the piano. But some days I feel more like playing the bass guitar, and then I'm playing bass. But my favorite, I think, is still the bass, because that's really my instrument. And especially because when you play, you really can feel it. You feel the vibration of
the low tones and
yes,
right, yeah,
yes.
It's a fantastic instrument. I actually have a bass guitar as well, but I don't spend much time on it as I should, to pick up on it, properly. But it's a wonderful instrument to have as an extra tool, especially with as a musician. And it's nice for composing, especially if you're going to do the funky, poppy kind of things. A lot of songs are based on bass lines, That's how it goes. Well, how do you? I know you've got a few kids, so how do you combine family life with your music? And are they playing music as well?
They did a few years ago, but because now they are going to high school, they have more work for school, and they like to do some sports as well. So they had to choose. They are enjoying making music together with other people, but when they have to practice at home and it costs some energy, I think they are a little bit lazy maybe. So right now they choose just to be together with their friends, to game a little bit, to be outside, do some sports. But I won't push them neither, because I don't believe that pushing is the solution. We have a rehearsal room in our house. There is a drum, there are guitars, bass, there is a piano. So everything is available. And I hope that one day they will pick it up again. Yes.
Well, that would be wonderful. What are their ages? Are they, they're like young teenagers now, or?
Yes, they are 13 and 14 years old.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's what am I going to do age, and of course, gaming is a big thing with the youth today, and the getting out there with the smartphones and stuff. But that's wonderful if they have the opportunity to join back to the music, and they have a good support base, because your husband is also a musician part-time as well, right?
He still does it as a hobby. Right now, actually, he's learning all the songs of one or two of my bands where I'm playing in. Because, I want to perform practically every weekend when it's possible again. So we hope, actually, that one day it can become a little problem that I have to play with 2 or 3 bands at the same time, which is not possible, of course. And then he can be my...
your substitute.
My substitute, yes.
Wow, that's quite amazing, because your husband actually was the one who started you on the bass.
Indeed. Indeed.
And now you become from being the student to being the teacher.
Yes, it's how it went.
Oh.
But he says that I have much more talent than he ever did. And he supports it.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, it's great when your partner can support you in what you're doing. You got the backup from your family. Your kids, they like to see you perform as well, I'm sure.
Yes, they're very, very proud, because we have a big picture in our living room where I play the bass. And every time their friends come and they see the picture, they say, "Hey, right there, that's Rock Chick, that's our mom." So they are very proud.
All right,
yes.
Fantastic. I've got one more question before I let you go, and that is, of course, we have our theme, which is this week based on inspiration. And so, what does inspiration mean to you?
For me, it's a very, very difficult question, because a lot of people ask me, "Ilse, when you compose your piano songs, how you do it? How goes the process?" And to be honest, it's very difficult to give a clear answer, because sometimes I'm at my piano and I feel that something is coming in to me. I can't explain really what or how, and then my hands are playing a chord or a melody, and I know that I have a good hearing. So when I hear something and I say, "Okay, it sounds pretty good," I start searching for more melody or to find some follow-up.
Right.
And but the inspiration, I feel it's like a vibe that I capture somehow. Sometimes I think about an animal. For example, when I go outside and we are going to have a walk and I hear some birds singing, it can be an inspiration. A color can be an inspiration. But it's a good question, Eddie, and it's not so difficult to give you a plain answer, but it's more like a feeling, I think.
Okay.
I'm a very emotional person, yes, and I really let the feelings in. The days that I'm open to feel the things, and then I compose some music, yes.
Sure. Things outside of your music, what inspires you? What does that mean for you in general? I mean, outside of just making your music?
Well, especially my kids, they like to listen when I'm composing a new song, and then I ask their opinion. And they know very well what they want, and they are honest with me. So they share their feelings and their thoughts, and then that can be a really good inspiration as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, listen, Ilse, I am so glad that you took the time out to join us this week. And I'm sure my listeners will be inspired by your little story you've told us. And I want to wish you the best of luck with your career. I know we're going to be doing a collaboration as soon as the COVID thing is lifted and we can finally get together to do some playing together with the classical music.
Yes, I look forward to it. Yeah, my message to your listeners is that to follow every dream, because when you try hard and you believe in it, lots of things are possible.
Okay, before you go, you have a website that people can find you on?
Yes, they can visit me at www.elisabethwolf.com, and on Facebook, when they type Elisabeth Wolf piano, they can see the projects I am doing. They can contact me, send me a mail, leave some comments. Feel free to find me and to contact me.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you again for this inspirational talk with you. And I want to wish you all the best. And we'll be making some music together pretty soon. Huh?
Okay. Thank you, Eddie.
Care. A lot of love to you and the family.
Take care, Eddie. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right, bye-bye. This is My Positive Podcast with Eddie C. Wow, I really enjoyed my guest this week, and I hope you did as well. As you know, there's always a theme for the week, and this week's theme is inspiration. So here's my quote. Inspiration. People with goals in life that follow their passions. Taking a photo of the vast and beautiful nature we live in. Showing vulnerability and overcoming hard times or fears. Being touched by things you experience with your senses. A song, a book, a walk, or just sitting still with your thoughts. Sharing what you feel inside with others. making your dreams come true, to inspire others so that they can too. Well, that's it for this week's show. But before I go, I'd like to thank my guests, Martine De Prins, David Pritchett, and Ilse van den Broeck for coming on my positive podcast. And remember, inspiration, it's whatever you make it, as long as you share it. You can find me on all platforms like Spotify, Android, and Apple. On Facebook, look for My Positive Podcast, and my website is mypositivepodcast.com. You can also contact me via my website or Facebook. A very special thanks to my technical producer, Iswan. This show is a production by Antwerp Podcast Service. My name is Eddie C., and this was MPP, My Positive Podcast. Tune in next week and stay positive.